Have you ever wondered what would happen if fate brought together two unlikely souls in the most desperate of circumstances? Deep in the pristine wilderness of Montana's Glacier National Park, an extraordinary encounter would test the limits of compassion and challenge everything we thought we knew about the relationship between humans and wildlife. It was early spring of 2023, when the harsh winter finally began releasing its grip on the landscape. The melting snow revealed patches of fresh grass and early wildflowers, marking the awakening of nature. Among the park's diverse inhabitants was Luna, a magnificent grizzly bear who carried precious cargo. She was heavily pregnant with cubs. The morning air was crisp and clean as Luna made her way through familiar territory, her powerful form moving with surprising grace despite her condition. She had spent weeks preparing for the arrival of her cubs, carefully selecting the perfect den and gathering resources to sustain her through the upcoming months. For generations, her kind had roamed these majestic mountains, their very presence a testament to the raw beauty and untamed spirit of the American wilderness. Luna's story was deeply intertwined with these ancient lands, where every tree, every stream, and every rocky outcrop held memories of her journey to survival. John Matthews, a seasoned hunter with 20 years of experience, had always respected the delicate balance of nature. Unlike many others, he understood that true conservation meant protecting all creatures, even those that others might fear. His weathered face and calloused hands told stories of countless days spent in these woods. The early morning sun cast long shadows through the towering pines as Luna continued her search for food. Her heightened maternal instincts told her that her time was drawing near, and she needed to build up her strength for the challenging days ahead. What neither Luna nor John knew was that their paths were about to cross in a way that would challenge everything they knew about survival, trust, and the unspoken bond between man and nature. The stage was set for an encounter that would touch hearts and change lives forever. As Luna made her way through a particularly dense thicket, her keen nose picked up the scent of something both familiar and alarming. There was food nearby, but something about it triggered an ancient warning in her primitive brain. Still, her growing hunger urged her forward. The sound of birds suddenly falling silent should have been her first warning. In her desperate search for sustenance to nourish her unborn cubs, Luna had wandered into an area she would normally avoid. The metal glint, barely visible beneath the forest debris, would soon change everything. What happened next, the limits of both human compassion and animal instinct. In a split second, the peaceful morning erupted into chaos as the sharp snap of metal against metal shattered the tranquil forest air. Luna's agonized roar echoed through the valleys, a sound that would haunt anyone who heard it. John was miles away when he first heard the distress call. 2 decades in these woods had taught him to recognize the different sounds of the forest, and this one made his blood run cold. It was a sound of pure anguish, one that transcended species and spoke directly to the heart. Miles away in the ranger station, reports began coming in of disturbing sounds in the northeast sector. Park officials knew they had a situation on their hands, but the treacherous spring conditions made immediate response difficult. Time was running out, and help seemed impossibly far away. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky as Luna struggled against her metal prison, her powerful muscles straining against the unforgiving trap. Each movement sent waves of pain through her body, and her precious cargo made every attempt at escape more dangerous than the last. Through it all, one thought consumed her primitive yet powerful mind: survival. Not just for herself, but for the new lives she carried within her. As the morning wore on, her strength began to fade, and the reality of her situation became increasingly dire. Little did she know help was about to arrive from the most unexpected source. Luna's desperate situation grew more dire with each passing moment in the Montana wilderness. The illegal trap had clamped tightly around her front paw, causing excruciating pain. Her precious cargo of unborn cubs made every movement a calculated risk for survival. The morning frost settled on her thick fur as she tried to remain still and conserve energy. The forest around her had gone eerily silent, as if nature itself held its breath. John Matthews tracked the source of the distressing sounds with growing concern. His decades of experience told him this wasn't a typical animal cry of hunger or territory. The broken branches and disturbed earth painted a clear picture of desperate struggle. As he drew closer, his trained senses picked up the metallic scent of blood in the air. The morning fog made navigation challenging, but he pressed on with determination. The sight that greeted him when he finally reached the clearing stopped him cold. Before him was one of the largest grizzly bears he'd ever encountered in these woods. The trap was an old model, banned years ago for its brutal and unforgiving design. Luna's attempts to free herself had only made the situation worse, the metal digging deeper. Her labored breathing and trembling form told him she was at her absolute limit. Park rangers were still hours away, delayed by treacherous spring conditions. The nearest access road had been washed out by recent flooding and spring thaw. John knew he faced an impossible decision that could cost him his life, either way. His hand instinctively moved to his rifle, but his heart pulled him in another direction. 20 years in these woods had taught him that every creature deserved a chance. Luna's eyes, usually fierce and untamed, now showed something hauntingly different. There was a primal fear mixed with maternal determination in her gaze. She hadn't given up fighting, but her strength was visibly fading with each passing minute. The bear's massive form shuddered with each breath, her pain evident in every movement. John could see signs of her pregnancy, making the situation even more heartbreaking. The trap's cruel teeth had done significant damage to Luna's front paw. Blood stained the ground beneath her, creating a stark contrast against the spring snow. Every attempt to pull free only caused the mechanism to clamp down harder. Time was running out as the cold and blood loss took their toll on her body. The lives of both mother and unborn cubs hung precariously in the balance. The hunter's mind raced through various scenarios, each more dangerous than the last. He had basic medical supplies in his pack, but approaching a wounded bear was suicide. Yet standing by and watching her suffer went against everything he believed in. The morning sun now cast long shadows through the trees, marking precious time passing. A decision had to be made soon, before it was too late for Luna and her cubs. Local wildlife authorities were notified, but couldn't guarantee timely arrival. The spring thaw had made many mountain paths treacherous and impassable. John knew that waiting for official help might mean condemning Luna to a slow death. His experience told him that she had maybe an hour left before shock set in. The risk of losing both mother and cubs grew with each passing minute. Luna's powerful muscles trembled with exhaustion from her ongoing ordeal. Her initial fierce struggles had given way to occasional weak attempts at freedom. The trap's anchoring chain rattled against exposed rocks with each movement. Nearby trees bore deep claw marks from her earlier, desperate attempts to escape. The scene told a story of diminishing hope and fading strength. The morning birds had long since abandoned their songs in the surrounding trees. An eerie silence hung over the clearing, broken only by Luna's labored breathing. John could see other wildlife keeping their distance, sensing the unfolding drama. The natural order of the forest had been disrupted by this man-made tragedy. Nature itself seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Something in Luna's eyes spoke to John's soul on a level beyond words. Despite being natural adversaries, there was a connection in this moment of crisis. Her gaze held no aggression now, only a desperate plea for help that transcended species. The hunter had seen this look before in other wounded animals he'd helped save. It was a universal language of suffering that needed no translation. Years of experience had taught John to read animal behavior with precision. He could tell that Luna was reaching the limits of her extraordinary endurance, her once powerful form now slumped against the ground in growing defeat. The pregnant bear's maternal instincts still fought against overwhelming odds. Time for careful deliberation was running out. Action was needed now. The severity of the situation continued to escalate with each passing moment. Luna's breathing had become more labored, her movements increasingly weak. The trap's unrelenting grip showed no signs of loosening its cruel hold. John knew that without immediate intervention, the outcome would be tragic. The next few minutes would determine the fate of both mother and unborn cubs. John knew he was about to risk everything in a moment that would define his life. Drawing on decades of experience, he began slowly removing his heavy winter gear. Any sudden movements now could spook Luna and seal both their fates forever. His hands moved deliberately as he set aside his rifle and reached for his medical kit. The morning sun cast long shadows as he prepared for what came next. Luna's eyes tracked his every movement with a mix of fear and desperation. Her powerful muscles tensed as the human drew closer, but she didn't lash out. Whether from exhaustion or understanding, she remained unnaturally still. John spoke in low, soothing tones as he inched forward on his hands and knees. The distance between man and bear shrank with each heartbeat. Every instinct screamed at John to turn back from this foolhardy rescue attempt. One swipe from those massive paws could end his life in an instant. Yet something in Luna's eyes kept him moving forward, inch by careful inch. He could now see the full extent of damage the trap had caused to her paw. The sight strengthened his resolve to save this magnificent creature. Time seemed to stand still in the clearing as predator and prey faced each other. John's experienced hands moved slowly toward the cruel metal device. Luna's hot breath warmed his face as he examined the trap's mechanism. Despite her pain, she appeared to understand that help had finally arrived. Their eyes met in a moment of profound connection across species barriers. The trap's release mechanism had rusted partially shut from spring moisture. John's fingers worked carefully to clear debris from the crucial components. Each movement had to be precise. One wrong move could spell disaster. Luna's massive form trembled beside him, but she remained remarkably still. Years of woodland experience had led to this defining moment. Sweat beaded on John's forehead despite the morning chill as he worked. The sound of his own heartbeat thundered in his ears with each movement. Luna's labored breathing matched his own in an unlikely synchronization. The trap's teeth had done significant damage, but nothing appeared broken. If he could just release the mechanism, she might have a fighting chance. Blood made John's fingers slippery as he manipulated the trap's springs. Luna occasionally whimpered, a sound he never expected from a grizzly. Her trust in him seemed to grow with each gentle touch and soft word. The sun climbed higher, marking precious minutes as they ticked away. Both human and bear knew this was their only chance for survival. Suddenly, something shifted under John's careful manipulation of the trap. The rusty mechanism groaned as decades-old springs began to give way. Luna's muscle tensed beneath his touch, sensing the coming moment. John's voice remained steady, continuing to murmur words of comfort. Everything hung in perfect balance between disaster and salvation. A metallic screech pierced the morning air as the trap finally released. Luna's massive form recoiled instantly, yanking her injured paw free. John scrambled backward, unsure if their temporary trust would hold. The bear staggered to her feet, testing her weight on the damaged limb. Blood flowed freely now, but the worst of the danger had passed. Their eyes met one final time across the clearing, hunter and hunted. No longer trapped, Luna's wild nature began to reassert itself slowly. Yet something lingered in her gaze, recognition, perhaps even gratitude. John remained perfectly still as she backed away into the underbrush. The morning shadows swallowed her form as she disappeared from view. Recovery would be long, but Luna's strong spirit would see her through. John gathered his gear with trembling hands, still processing what happened. The empty trap lay harmlessly open now, its cruel purpose thwarted. He would make sure no other creature fell victim to its metal teeth. The morning's events had changed both bear and hunter forever. Rangers would arrive hours later to find only tracks and blood traces. John's report would help them locate and remove other illegal traps. Luna's story would inspire new protection measures throughout the park. Sometimes the greatest acts of courage come from trusting the impossible. The forest would remember this day when humanity chose compassion over fear. Years later, John would sometimes catch glimpses of a mother bear with cubs. Whether it was Luna or not, he chose to believe she had survived to thrive. The experience had taught him that boundaries between species could blur. In moments of crisis, ancient enemies could find common ground in mercy. Some bonds transcend nature's laws, forged in moments of desperate trust. Luna staggered through the dense forest, her injured paw leaving a trail behind her. Every step was a battle, as she fought to return to her den before darkness fell. Her maternal instincts drove her forward, knowing her unborn cubs needed her alive. The forest provided natural medicines, plants and cool streams to ease her pain. Time would prove to be her greatest healer as spring turned to early summer. Weeks passed as Luna's remarkable healing abilities worked their natural magic. She stayed close to her den, venturing out only for essential food and water. The damaged paw slowly mended, though scars would always tell her story. Her belly grew larger as the time for her cub's arrival drew ever closer. Nature's cycle continued, turning trauma into triumph with each passing day. When the cubs finally arrived, they were small but healthy, 2 perfect lives. Luna's ordeal had not diminished her ability to care for her precious offspring. She taught them survival skills with the added wisdom of her near-fatal encounter. The cubs grew strong under her protection, learning to navigate the wilderness. Their playful antics brought new life to the forest that had almost claimed their mother. John continued his conservation work with renewed purpose after that day. His encounter with Luna inspired him to fight harder against illegal trapping. Working with park rangers, he helped locate and remove dozens of cruel devices. His story inspired changes in local wildlife protection laws and enforcement. The hunter had become one of the forest's most dedicated guardians. The following spring brought unexpected joy as John patrolled familiar trails. In a sunlit clearing, he spotted a familiar shape, Luna with her growing cubs. She showed no fear, merely watchful caution as she guided her family past. The limp in her step was barely noticeable now, a testament to her resilience. Their eyes met briefly, rekindling that moment of trust they once shared. Through the seasons, Luna's legend grew among park rangers and locals. Her story became a symbol of hope and the power of unexpected kindness. The cubs thrived under her care, learning the ways of their ancient species. Together, they represented nature's ability to heal and forgive past wrongs. Their survival proved that compassion could bridge the wildest of divides. Rangers monitored their progress from a respectful distance over the years. Luna's family became living proof that human intervention could save lives. Her cubs grew strong and eventually ventured out to establish their own territories. The mother bear's wisdom, hard-won through suffering, passed to a new generation. Life had come full circle in the most beautiful and unexpected way. Each spring, new flowers bloomed where Luna's blood once stained the earth. The forest seemed to remember, growing more vibrant in that sacred space. Wildlife returned in greater numbers, sensing the area's special significance. Even the birds sang louder here, as if celebrating a story of survival. Nature had witnessed a miracle and would never be quite the same. John's life changed profoundly after his encounter with the wounded bear. He devoted himself to wildlife photography instead of hunting, capturing beauty rather than taking life. His images of Luna and her family helped raise awareness about conservation. The man who once carried a rifle now carried only a camera and medical supplies. His transformation inspired others to see the forest's creatures in a new light. The story spread beyond the park's boundaries, touching hearts everywhere. People came from miles around, hoping to glimpse the famous bear family. Luna's legacy inspired new generations of wildlife protectors and conservationists. The forest that witnessed their extraordinary encounter became protected land. What began as tragedy had transformed into a testament to life's resilience. News of similar acts of compassion began emerging from other wilderness areas. Luna's story had sparked a movement, encouraging others to choose kindness over fear. The relationship between humans and wildlife slowly began to shift in positive ways. More resources were dedicated to animal protection and habitat preservation. A single act of courage had created ripples that would continue for years to come. Other hunters followed John's example, becoming guardians instead of predators. The forest's delicate balance began to restore itself as illegal trapping declined. Luna's cubs grew to represent hope for the future of their endangered species. Their survival story reminded everyone that every life held precious value. The wilderness had taught humanity an unforgettable lesson in compassion. Time continued its endless cycle as seasons passed in the mountain wilderness. Luna's grand cubs now roamed the same trails where she once fought for life. The old trap lay in a museum, teaching visitors about conservation's importance. John's photographs ensured their story would inspire future generations. The forest had witnessed magic that day, when humanity chose love over fear. The scars on Luna's paw faded, but never completely disappeared. They remained as a reminder of the day when trust overcame instinct. Her story became legend, whispered by the wind through ancient pines. Each spring she returned to the clearing where compassion saved her life. Some bonds, once forged in desperate moments, truly last forever.